All righty. Welcome everybody to this webinar. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in just a minute here at the top of the hour. We'll let everybody filter on in. All righty. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started now that's the top of the hour. We'll let a couple more people filter in. So my name is Amy Focarino. I'm the Senior Events Manager here at Consensus. I'm going to be the moderator for today's session. This webinar is presented by Consensus. Consensus is an intelligent demo automation platform that helps scale sales and pre-sales organizations with interactive video demo platform. You can learn more at goconsensus.com. We are still taking responses to our SE report survey. So if you have 15 minutes and want to contribute, you can scan the QR code here. I will also post the link that you can click on to contribute to the survey. It takes less than 15 minutes. All the answers are anonymous. If you haven't seen our survey from report from 2023, you can view that on our website. But we'd really love your input so that this can be our biggest and best and most comprehensive report for 2024 yet.
And I would add, this is an investment, not a piece of work. This is an investment in yourselves. So urge you to complete this survey.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Yeah, we hear from a lot of folks that they are able to use the survey, to get either more headcount, or some of people have been able to negotiate for higher bonuses or raises, things like that. Really able to, help their organization in all kinds of different ways. There's so much information in this report. So if you have a couple minutes, we'd really, really appreciate your input. Okay, we had such a great time at our events in 2023. Peter was at our San Francisco event last year, and hopefully we'll get him at this one as well. But we're so excited to be gearing up for our first event of 2024. It's going to be in San Francisco. This is our third time hosting DemoFest X in the Bay Area, and we're planning on this being our biggest and best yet. We have a change of venue we're really excited about. We'll have some new networking opportunities. We're going to be offering free professional headshots for those that attend earlier in the day.
Ooh.
Yeah. And of course, the top tier pre-sales and buyer enablement sessions from leaders and coaches you love. So you can register at demofest.com, or I will also post the link to register for 2024 West Coast in the chat as well. All right, let's get started with this webinar. So we encourage you to participate in today's webinar. Peter is a very engaging speaker, so make sure you have that chat open and you respond in there. He'll answer questions at the close of the event, but you're welcome to post questions at any time through the Q&A box. As I mentioned, Peter's very engaging, so if you have a question, make sure you put it in Q&A. All the other things like the engagement tools and things like that, go ahead and post those in the chat. I just don't want your questions to get lost in there, so make sure you're posting those in the Q&A box. And now I would like to turn the rest of the time over to you, Peter.
All right, many thanks. Let me go ahead and share with my screen when you are done there. And let's do that. There we go. Can you see a slide that says great demo? Everybody, tell you what, open up your chat window if you would, please. And let me know if you see it. If you can see my mouse in the upper left-hand corner and my mouse in the lower right-hand corner. All right. Got a handful of yeses cruising through. Curiosity questions. What is your job title? Just type it in the chat dialog box. Let's see what you say. Hey, Sergey. Cool. Customer engineer, solutions consultant, SEs, principals. All right. BCs, ACs. All right, terrific. We have more that we had, let me rephrase, we have more than we can cover in the time allotted. So I'm just going to talk really, really fast. No, I'm not going to do that. If we run out of time, that's just fine. I do want to start this off with something I came up with at about 5:30 a.m. this morning. Doing discovery is as simple as ABC. Anybody type into your chat dialog box, what do you think the ABC might be? And Sammy, you're more than welcome to contribute. Any guesses? What will be ABC? And if you say always be closing, I'm gonna smack you. No, yes, Dave, you got it. You got it. You got it. Always be curious. That is exactly what we want to do. Dave got it. Jason got it. A handful of others got it. I think this is the right mindset to go into with discovery. So let's dive into this. Some numbers: 8 billion, 0%, and 50%. What could this possibly mean? Well, there are over 8 billion people in the world today. 0%, zero, are absolutely identical. And intriguingly, and I just thought this was cool, 50% of our genome is shared with plants. But the real point here is that there are 8 billion individuals in this world. So you have to ask yourself the question, should all discovery be done the same way for all 8 billion people? Type your answer in the chat dialog box with passion. Let me see what you say. And the answer should be a resounding no. Thank you. Some discovery numbers. This is what we do when we're preparing for great demo workshops or doing discovery workshops. Figure about 2 to 4 hours worth of telephone conversations or web, 3 to 6 reviews of demos, discovery calls, recorded sessions, or both, which results in on the order of 8 to 15 typewritten pages of notes and comments. Does anybody remember what this material is right here? If you do, type in your chat dialog box. But that's what it represents. So we do a fair amount of practicing what we preach here. Yeah, paper. I don't even know what that stuff is anymore. Quick story. Some of you may have heard this before. This is actually one of the reasons that caused me, former trees, caused me to actually draft this fabulous book, which some of you have known and some of you have read. And the conversation went like this. Sammy, would you unmute and be my role play partner for this, please? By the way, audience, Sammy does not look like the gentleman in the image here. She's using John Cook's account. So just to clear that up.
I look
So
like
I said, there you go. So I said to a head of sales, so tell me, what percent of your team does a good job, you feel does a good job in discovery? And she says,
about 20%.
and I thought for a moment, I said, what percent of your team thinks they do a good job of discovery, but you know they really don't? She says,
Hang on, let me close my door.
and I hear this thunk, 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 ka-chunk. And then she says,
About 80%.
yeah. So about 80% of her team was suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. In other words, they don't know what they don't know. And that really spurred me to write the book. So when we're talking about discovery, what we want to do is get what we need, satisfy our prospect, and try to avoid, for the Monty Python fans here, the feeling of an interrogation or an inquisition. So those are going to be our overarching objectives as we go through the rest of this presentation. So we got a lot of stuff on the agenda. You can read, take a quick scan. If there's anything on this you really want to make sure we get to as we hit about 45 minutes off the hour, let me know. Well, let's talk about qualification versus discovery, because this is an area that many people are either confused about or make some inaccurate assumptions. So imagine you are a prospect. You're interested in learning about this vendor's offering. So you click the book a demo button, and this vendor sadly is not using Consensus's intelligent demo automation capabilities. So instead, what happens is an SDR, BDR reaches out to you to qualify you. And he or she, or they ask typically 4 sets of questions. You have a budget? Are you the person in charge? Have you got a defined set of needs? You have an established time frame. And if the answers are yes, well, then that SDR, BDR sets a meeting to actually do something useful for both parties. However, if you're qualified out, what happens? You're gone. You have fallen out of the funnel, if you will. So why is qualification alone insufficient? Well, hundreds of reasons, but one of the most intriguing ones has to do with a term that I invented a year ago called lead churn. So what's going on here? In qualification, you're looking to put boundaries around a prospect situation. And it's all about, if you will, the vendor. Discovery, on the other hand, should be done for both parties so that both parties feel that they're really getting something out of this engagement. And an easy way to look at this is to think in terms of qualification being a very small subset of the overall, if you will, discovery landscape. So with respect to qualification and our discovery objectives, did we get what we need? No, not discovery. We got some qualification information. Did the prospect get satisfied? Nope. Did we avoid an interrogation? Well, using your chat dialog box, say yes, no, or maybe, or just Y, N, or M, and see what you guys think, former trees. Nope, you avoided, yeah, you did not avoid an interrogation. I totally agree with that. I was curious to see what you say on that. All right, so let's continue sort of this thread and talk about prospects that engage us who are just browsing versus being in an active buying process. And by just browsing, I mean they're exploring things for the future, but they don't have a budget, they don't have a concrete plan. They're just trying to get an idea of what's possible. So, oops, sorry. So imagine this. I forget who gave me this quote, but 50% of the leads that you generate are qualified, but are not ready to buy right now, meaning probably a better way to phrase this is they are qualifiable. Yeah. So think about all of the leads that come into your funnel, but they don't enter it. They get qualified out. They spill over the side here. And what happens to them? Well, they churn. They go on to someone else in many cases. So if you click that book a demo button as a prospect and you never see a demo, everybody in your chat dialog box, how would you feel? You click that button, you got qualified out, you never saw anything. How would you feel? Type it in your chat dialog box. Let's see what you guys said. Yeah, annoyed, never gonna buy from that vendor. You'll churn to someone else. So yeah, not a company I'd buy from. So there was a moral here. Think about your SDR processes. So here's an alternative. Given that 50% of these folks are splashing out of your funnel today, contemplate recycling those leads. So here are these leads, they're sort of washing down the mountainside. What we want to do when they become ripe, if you will, is to bring them back so that they rain on your mountain or snow on your mountain. So how can you do that? Instead of letting that lead churn, recycle that lead through the use of a vision generation demo. Now, vision generation demos have two simple components. They've got an example success story and a handful of example screens. There's a tool that's fabulously designed to provide vision generation demonstrations. Does anybody know what it might be? Type it into your chat dialog box. Let's see what you guys come up with. Give you a moment. Yes, Maria, well done last. Jeffrey, everybody. Yeah, and it starts off by asking the question, what's your job title? So you look at this and say, well, yeah, I'm a pre-sales leader. And then it says, well, you know what the rest of it does, but let's say they pick one of the topics. Here's a great way to put it together. Dear pre-sales leader, here is a top level challenge that many of you and your peers face. Here are the pain points, the problems and reasons that are causing you to be struggling. Here are the specific capabilities you might be interested in. And here's the typical value that other folks that have used this tool have enjoyed. And if this was, by the way, a live conversation, you might ask, how does this compare with your situation? But if you're using this in the consensus mode, you would then say, okay, based on this, would you like to see an example or two or three of some screens to give you an idea of what's possible? You say, yes, please. And that's exactly what you show. And in consensus, you get a chance to provide a verbal overview that gives the what's in this screen, how it's going to help this person solve their problems, and the value associated with making a change. If you're doing this live, you can actually have a conversation and basically go as far as the prospect has interest. And if the prospect is truly just browsing, then they've been satisfied. They're likely to come back to you as a lead that is recycled. So contemplate this as an approach. By the way, there's a fabulous book here. I know the author. And if you read chapter 11, it gives you all the details and the recipe for vision generation demonstrations. So for folks that are just browsing and our discovery objectives, did we get what we need? For that time frame, yes. We've understood, is this a qualified lead? Are they a reasonable fit? Are they in an active buying process, or are they just browsing? We've satisfied our prospects' desire to get a sense of what's possible, and we have avoided an interrogation. Everybody type thunderous applause in your chat dialog box. What a wonderful way to satisfy the just browsing cohorts. So now let's take a look at some of the other dimensions. So there's simple tools versus complex offerings, champion experience, buyer experience. Let's look at these three to kick things a little bit further down the road. So how many of you, well, let me make a little definition or two. Tools versus, let's say, broader solutions. Tools are lower cost. It's a simple buying process, and typically speaking, there's no committee. 100 years ago, I was managing a team that included sales and, well, engineering. And they came to me and said, we need a bunch of licenses of SolidWorks. I said, what's SolidWorks? They said, doesn't matter. We need 12 licenses. I said, terrific. Tell me exactly what you need, and I will order it for you. And that's what we did. Solutions, on the other hand, typically are higher cost. It's a complex buying process and often may involve multiple members. And the I think it's this Gartner chart here that Garen shared. It's not a simple process to purchase. And in fact, if you look at this in more detail, it is a tortured process to get to the point where you actually can bring a complex, expensive solution on board. So what does that mean? That means that there are going to be people with more or less buying experience. And if you look at buying experience on the y-axis here versus product complexity, what you're going to see is it breaks into four quadrants. You've got people who are inexperienced buying inexperienced, or excuse me, inexpensive tool type products. You've got people that have done it before and know how to do it. As you move to the right, you've got people who are dealing with complex offerings, but they're inexperienced doing it. And then you've got people who are experienced, but they're still dealing with complex offerings. We need to understand who we are talking to so we can understand what level of help they need and what level of guidance we need to apply. So, curiosity question, how many of you type in, if you've purchased tools by yourself, type in tools. If you've been the sole purchaser of complex solutions, type in complex solutions. If you've been a member of the buying committee, or if you've been a champion, yeah, this is what I thought. Everybody answer. So, okay, Morgan's actually done complex solutions, been a champion, been both. Okay. When I did this live with some folks a year ago, approximately 5% of the room of about 150, 200 people said they were actually experienced buying request rejected. Sorry, Bradley, sorry to hear that. They were actually experienced buying complex offerings. So this is a beginning of a disconnect. If you haven't had experience buying complex tools, you may want to actually ask to participate in that process so you can gain those kinds of insights. So when you look at buyer experience versus product complexity, the inexperienced folks buying tools need guidance and the information they need to place an order. It's pretty straightforward, but they need some help. Those that are experienced probably don't need help. You just need to give them what they need. As you move to the right, particularly this bottom right, they not only need guidance, they not only need full discovery, but they need guidance through the process. Here's what typically happens next, dear prospect, et cetera. And of course, the folks that are experienced, they need and they expect a full discovery set of conversations. So did we get what we need for folks when we're looking at tools versus complex offerings? Yep. Did we satisfy our prospect? Yes. Did we avoid an interrogation? Absolutely. How many of you have ever been a champion? Type that again in your chat dialog box. I think I just saw a handful. Let's tell you, let's do it this way. If you've been a champion, type yes. If you've not been a champion, type no. Let's see it. Yeah, we got a handful of yeses. Nice. Okay, but the no's are streaming in. All right. Champions, same issues, but slightly different because a champion is somebody who wants to move things forward mutually, if you will. So you've got champions that are inexperienced buying tools, they're experienced buying tools, they're inexperienced, but they're eager to bring aboard a complex offering. And of course, they may be experienced in all these processes. You need to map to their level of experience and provide them, again, the degree of guidance that they need and the level of discovery that they need to satisfy them and ensure their processes move forward smoothly. So, how many of you are familiar with this book? Type yes or no in your chat dialog box. No? Okay, this should be mandatory reading. Garen Hess, also the founder of Consensus, wrote this book about 5 years ago. And it really opens people's minds to the idea of being proactive about helping your prospect buy. So as opposed to simply following your sales process stages, this is thinking in terms of what can I do to enable and help my champion with his or her or their internal processes. And this could include things like vision generation demos and other internal selling tools, success stories and references, anticipating objections, not necessarily from your champion, but from the other members of the team internally, providing value analyses, identifying metrics that are meaningful, providing insight into value realization events, which we'll get to here in just a few minutes. And how can you tell if a champion is experienced? Well, what do you think? How about what is your level of experience being a champion? Have you ever done this before? Would you like help? Can I suggest some things that have helped other champions in similar situations move through their processes smoothly? All right, so with that in mind, let's go a little bit more broad. What about the rest of the buying team and other people that are involved? All of these folks are people that the champion is going to have to, in one form or another, deal with, support, address, enable, and on and on. So as you're thinking about champion enablement, and this might be Garen's next book, there are a range of different dimensions here that one might want to contemplate. All right, if this is resonating, type yes, or right, let's see, YWP, meaning yes with passion, in your chat dialog box. All right, good. We got what we needed with respect to champion experience and our discovery objectives. I believe we satisfied our prospect. In fact, we may have absolutely delighted our prospect by being proactive, and we've certainly avoided interrogation. Now let's broaden this up a bit and take a look at buyer experience. It's really the same, but from a standpoint of this person is not necessarily a champion. They're just a buyer and they want to move things forward. So same issues. You've got people that if they're inexperienced, they find it moderately difficult to buy tools because they've never done it before. People that have bought tools previously in the same organization, they know how to raise POs, they know how to get things funded, they know how to manage their budgets. On the other hand, if we're talking about very complex offerings, people that are inexperienced may find it very difficult to buy, which is why you end up with that tortured pathway from Gartner. And of course, even people that are experienced may still find it quite difficult. So again, we're talking about providing guidance in alignment with our prospects' needs and experience. So again, we're talking about enablement. What kinds of things in a general sense could we do to help enable buyers with their journeys, with their processes? Well, in addition to what we already listed for champions, vision generation, internal selling tools, suggesting that we execute NDAs or mutual NDAs early in the process so that it can get done. Similarly, along the lines of data and privacy surveys that could take weeks in some cases, particularly for more complicated tools. Get the legal agreements moving if they're going to be an issue, providing value analyses, metrics, as we said before, value realizations events. And again, how can you tell? You ask. Tell me, Sammy, who looks like John, actually, Sammy, what is your level of buying experience? What's the biggest thing you've ever bought? As she wakes up and unmutes. Or Sammy, you still there? Am I still here? Can you guys hear me? If you can, please type. Okay, good. Sammy may have either dropped off or had a problem with her audio. Good. Let's continue then. Um, I put this together a while ago, and I just think it's wonderful. If you look at anxiety on the y-axis here, increasing, versus over time, and here's where the purchase actually gets made. A seller and a buyer follow interesting journeys. So the seller here is in red. Okay, Sammy says she's having an issue with her audio. The seller's in red at the very beginning. This is a seller. Seller's anxiety is high until you get a prospect that looks good, and they sort of bounce back and forth. Prospect says, okay, I have everything I need, and then they go quiet for a period of time. This is where we as sellers go, they ghosting us, are they really going to buy, or is it going to no decision or whatever? Intriguingly, the buyer has a similar pathway. At the very beginning, they're generally reticent to engage with salespeople. But then as they go through discovery, they see demos, whatever else is needed, then they go into an area here that's similar. It's called, does anybody know what this area here is called? Type it in if you do. If you don't, just type N, meaning I don't know. See what you guys come up with. It's called risk. Risk is where you're thinking as a prospect, okay, I have everything I need if I'm going to move forward to purchase this offering. However, is this the best offering? Is this the best price? Is there something coming out that might be better in 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months from now? It's called risk. And understanding that is, I think, one of the keys to helping buyers go through their purchasing processes. There are a number of sales methodologies that tell you that what you want to try to do is move the purchase to here so that people don't actually go through risk. Is this all resonating? Give me a yes or no in your chat dialog box, if you would, please. Okay, good. Thank you. Also, just want to make sure you guys are all arrived. Live now. The purchase has taken place. Does the anxiety drop for the buyer? What do you guys think? Type yes or no. The purchase has just been made. No, absolutely accurate. In fact, the anxiety level increases because now you've invested 100,000, 250,000, $1 million, and you've not yet gotten what? You've not yet gotten what? It better work. Exactly that. You have, you've not yet gotten the value out of that. So let's talk briefly about value realization events. And when we think about a timeline to value realization, here might be a typical go live process. So here is the contract and the purchase order. This is where the buyers actually finally made a decision. Traditional salespeople, and of course, there's nobody on the line that's traditional, are only engaged in this process through this point here and do not get in their way as they run to their next opportunity. Good sales teams pursue this process through go live, and that's much better. But truly great account teams go one step beyond. Does anybody know? Type it in your chat dialog box. They go to the point where what is beginning to be returned to the buyer, to where value begins to be received. And it's not the full annual ROI, it's just 1 or 2 or 3 small wins, small victories. The first time I'm able to get visibility in something I couldn't get before. The first time I'm able to get that report that took me freaking weeks to get. Those are called value realization events. And the vendor that in discovery uncovers, discusses, and it reaches agreement with the prospect on value realization events is really, I think, embodying, if you will, buyer enablement and one of the key ideas behind doing discovery. So in this presentation, I've got a list here. If you want these, because it's too long to read, send me an email afterwards and I'll be happy to send you the presentation. So with respect to buyer experience and our discovery objectives, we got what we needed, we satisfied our prospect, and we avoided an interrogation. So let me just pause there. How are we doing? Questions, comments? Does this look good so far? Give me a yes if you want me to continue. Give me a Q. Okay, Eduardo, thank you. All right, let's dive in, continue. How many of you would class yourselves as an executive? Give me a Y if you are and an N if you're not. Y, I've got a few executives. Cool. Okay. for everybody who's not an executive, what would you say are the hallmarks of executives? Type it in your chat dialog box. Let's see what you guys come up with. Okay, yeah, crisp, focused, busy, no time decision making. Absolutely. So when you are doing this, Mercedes, I love it. Could be Tesla today, right? Good communicator. When you're working with executives, contemplate that they are really thinking in terms of the tip of the iceberg. That's what they want to deal with. They don't want to deal with everything that's underwater. They want to communicate what they need to communicate, and they are then going to delegate you down to their team members to execute the balance of discovery. So they'll introduce you, they'll sponsor you, and they want to then know, how are things going? What have you learned? Give me the crisp summary version. So when you're dealing with executives, you want to think in terms of crisp vision generation demos, success stories and references, brief discovery. They need some, but not a lot. Brief discovery. Guidance is needed on suggestions, help with their process if they're new to it. And then a mutual action plan where you come back to report where things are, what you've learned, and what the next steps should be. So when you're doing discovery for executives, this is how you avoid an inquisition or an interrogation, is by recognizing that they only want to deal with the tip of the iceberg. So with respect to executives and our doing discovery objectives, we get what we need, we satisfy our prospect, and we avoid an interrogation. All right. How many of you are familiar with the technology adoption curve? Give me a Y or an N in your, yep, okay. Oh, interesting. How many? So let's do this. Just using, let's see, I for innovators, A for early adopters, E for early majority, L for late majority, and N for laggards. Type in what you are. I for innovator, E for early, no, I said A for adopters, early adopters, okay, innovators, or you can type it all out. A, P, P. Okay, interesting. Now, the same thing, and don't have to answer this now, but how would you describe your organization? Are you innovators, early adopters, early majority laggards? Here's the real point. We need to map discovery to the appetite and type of players we're dealing with on the technology adoption curve. So, oh, startup, okay, yeah. So when you're looking at for early adopters and innovators, they have a focus in technology. And in fact, demos for them often should be, and I hate to say this, stunningly awful harbor tours, because they want to see everything that your technology can do. And in fact, how many of you remember when iPads were first released? Type yes if you do or no if you don't. When iPads were first released, how many of you knew somebody that bought an iPad, and when they bought it, they had no idea how they were going to use it? But when you talk to them 2 weeks later, they had already developed 3 or 4. That was you, Patrick. I'd love to have you unmute and tell me how this went. Early adopters and innovators in particular synthesize solutions on their own. They identify what problems this new technology can solve, and they synthesize solutions on their own. They require very brief discovery, most typically. When you're talking about early adopters, you want to understand what advantages they want to enjoy as a result of early implementation. And as Natasha said here, yeah, they're easy to sell to because you're not selling to them. They're buying because they're excited about this technology. However, once you cross this, well, hopefully cross the chasm to the early majority, everybody read this word right here. What does a pragmaticist mean? What does that mean? It means they're focusing on solutions. They need to minimize risk, and therefore they need and want full discovery. They want you to understand them completely, richly. And intriguingly, and an opposite to innovators, they may not have see the problems they have without help. They're willing to change in terms of the early majority, but they don't want to change really unless they need to. The conservatives, the late majority, are even more so. They are more difficult to sell to. And interestingly, if you look at the amount of effort that's required to secure proof, it looks like this. So here for innovators and early adopters, technology demos, vision generation demos, that's what they love. As you get into the early majority, you need great demo technical proof demos. As you go a little bit deeper into this, they're going to start asking for POCs, then POVs. This is where you're going to start to get what? Type it into your chat dialog box. See if you guys come up with it just for Flappy Bird. That's funny. RFPs, headaches. Yeah, RFPs, RFIs, all that stuff. And also, you're going to see no decision rates increase effectively the same way. So that's, you can tell where you are with your products by on the technology adoption curve by what level of pilots, what level of proof they're asking for and how they engage with you. So did we get what we need when we mapped to various players on the technology adoption curve? Yes, we did. Did we satisfy our prospect? Yes, if we map to where they are on the technology adoption curve. Did we avoid an interrogation? Again, yes. All right, gentlemen and ladies, how are we doing? Give me a yes, no, or otherwise. Okay, we're in there. And I need to check with Sammy. Sammy, are you live and are you able to audio at some point?
I'm
Yes.
here.
All
Okay.
right. Okay. So
Here
let's. Phew.
we're
It's one thing when the presenter has technology problems. It's something else when the host does. Okay. Medical analogy. Fundamental principle, ladies and gentlemen. Complex solutions. Buyers want to be discovered. This may not sound logical, but let me develop it out a little bit. People will be reticent to engage initially, and that's actually one of the strengths of the doing discovery methodology. It eases people into a discovery conversation in a comfortable way. But let's compare. Let's say you have just suffered a scraped knee and the doctor is standing right next to you for whatever reason. Do you really need that doctor to ask 100 questions about how bad that is and what the bleeding issue is and what kind of a solution you might need? Type yes or no in your chat dialog box. Let's see what you guys come up with. And the answer, of course, should be no. All I need is, well, the US would say a Band-Aid. In the rest of the world, some people would probably say a plaster. On the other hand, if you were contemplating this kind of event, would you like your doctor to execute deep and thorough discovery before they open you up with a sample? Everybody type yes with passion in your chat dialog box. So yeah, so where you may want to avoid surgery, you may even initially wish to avoid the conversation, you need to have it. And in fact, as a patient, or a prospect in a complex solution buying process, you want to have that deep discovery conversation. So question, yeah, like that, yes, but us Brits don't do, okay. We don't do passion. You do passion occasionally. I have seen it, rarely, but I have seen it. So question for you guys, and for those of you that ever seen any of this from me before, you already know the answer, but how much discovery is enough? What do you think? Type it into your chat dialog box. Let's see what you guys come up with. How much discovery is enough? 10 questions, 20 questions, 50 questions, an hour per person. Any suggestions? Never stops. Okay, Dave, I totally agreed. Yeah, okay. But how much how much is needed? ABD, always be discovering. Both sides. George, Santa Marina is the correct answer, everybody. When both sides are satisfied. We're going to do a little bit of an example here. So, Sammy, I think you've done this with me before. Sammy thinks she has the flu. Sammy, are you there?
I'm here.
Perfect. Sammy thinks she has the flu. She's had it for 8 or 9 days, and she's not getting better. And she goes to hospital number one, doctor number one, and that's me. And she presents and she says, "I think I have the flu."
I think I have the flu.
I said, "Yeah, it's been going around. Everybody has it. I know you work at Consensus here. Writing a prescription here for a powerful new flu medicine called Fluvigon. Reach out. Go ahead and grab this, if you would, please. Got it? Got it. Good. I'd like you to get that prescription filled, start taking the pills, and you can start feeling better in a couple of days." All right, Sammy and audience, 2 questions. Number one, what did you think about that interaction? And more importantly, would you get that prescription filled and start taking those pills? So
No.
what did you guys think? And would you start? Sure, George. Yeah, well, okay. How about Sammy? What did you think?
I don't think I'd take that because maybe I would, but I don't know. I don't think I'd feel much better because probably I decided that I was sick instead of the doctor deciding I was sick with what he knows.
So you're self-prescribing at that point. Okay, yeah, too many assumptions. Yeah, people are uncomfortable. So Sammy's uncomfortable. She goes across town to doctor number two at hospital number two. And I'm going to be doctor number two again. She presents and she says, same thing.
I'm sick. I think I have the flu.
How long have you had it, Sammy?
About a week.
A week. Okay. Running a temperature?
Yep,
How high?
102.
102. So that's about 39 and a half for those of us not in the US. It's been steady or going up and down?
It's been pretty steady.
Pretty steady. Any sweats?
Oh yeah, all night long.
All night long. Nausea?
No, I'm not super nauseous.
Okay, good. Really glad to hear that. We continue for a good reason. We continue for another 5 to 8 doctor minutes, which is a long time, at the end of which I prescribe exactly the same medication. However, this time I send it electronically. Same 2 questions. How did you feel about that interaction? And now, what's the likelihood you would take those pills? What do you guys say? And Sammy, what do you say?
Yeah, I think I'd be way more likely to take them because they did some thorough background on how I've been feeling, and they came to a conclusion based on fact instead of just based on what I think as a person.
Perfect. Now, here's the non-obvious portion of this. Both doctors were right. Both prescribed exactly the same medication for her affliction, but the one that you are more comfortable with is the one who did what? Everybody type it in your chat dialog box. Did
Discovery.
discovery. Exactly that. And so the moral should be very clear. How much, two sets of morals here. Number one, how much discovery is enough? Well, number one, when you as a vendor have sufficient information to confidently and clearly propose a precise solution, that's important. But even more important is when the prospect agrees that you as the vendor have a sufficient understanding of their solution to be able to propose that precise solution. What's the minimum amount of discovery that I would recommend before moving forward with any next significant step in a sales or buying process, a demo? Well, the information you would collect in a great demo situation slide. So based on specific job title here, what's their top level challenge? What are their pain points? What capabilities are they looking for? What's the value associated with the change? What's their timing? What value realization events might they be contemplating? If you have this information, this is the baseline. If you're missing information here, I'm going to suggest that neither of you should feel satisfied, prospect or vendor. What's the maximum? Well, you guys have already doing the always be discovering and so forth, but I'm going to suggest that it might be represented by that 8 to 15 paper pages that really represents a thorough understanding of a prospect situation. And by the way, one of my favorite questions to ask when I'm ending a discovery call is the following one. Is there anything I haven't asked that I should be asking? Is there anything I haven't asked that I should be asking? Two sets of answers. Number one, they say, no, I think you've covered it all. Thanks. Okay, great. You've covered it all. Number two, they say, oh, actually, there's one more thing that's important. What a delightful way to uncover something that probably was important that hadn't been discussed earlier. So maximum, there's never a maximum. But how do you know? Well, let's do it this way. I know I want to go back again. I forgot about this. Maximum is really the great demo or doing discovery methodology is outlined here in this book. But let's talk again about great demo situation slides because they enable discovery communication in a very encrispened way. So when you think about a great demo situation slide, how they can be used, let's say, just for argument's sake, that a salesperson has done a terrific job of discovery and needs to communicate to a pre-sales colleague what is known so that colleague can put together a crisp, focused technical proof demonstration? Well, a situation slide has exactly what's needed to enable that communication to take place comfortably, crisply, and sufficiently completely. Well, what if the order is closed? Where might that information go next? Somebody type it in your chat dialog box. Who should receive this same exact information? And the answer is, that's right, professional services, enablement, if you will, or implementation, exactly that. Where might it go next? They've gone live. Who should get this exact same information, particularly including value realization events, support, and customer success? Absolutely that, customer care. And who else might be interested in this information? The buyer. Yeah, the buyer should definitely see it. Account management. Yeah, Chris, marketing. And who else might want to see it? Somebody type it in. Somebody added this to this last time I did this, and I had forgotten about it. Development, absolutely. So you close the loop. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to close this off by taking a few moments to talk about discovery as a methodology, and then we'll end this with that sort of musical question. How much discovery is enough? So question for you guys, based on what we've talked about in these multiple dimensions of discovery, should one discovery process or one discovery method, if you will, fit all folks? Everybody type no with passion. Absolutely correct. And so this is the doing discovery methodology that we teach. It's outlined in the book. Just a couple of quick comments about it. The About You and demographic sections are designed to enable your prospect to grow comfortable with the conversation. There are questions that are designed to be easy to ask and equally more importantly, easy to answer. Environment sort of continues that flow, and it's not until a few minutes, maybe 20, 30 minutes into a discovery conversation where you really begin to talk about, if you will, their major pain. You go through workflow analysis, what's going well, what could be done better. You quantify, you may need to do vision generation or vision re-engineering to enable them to understand other things that are possible. That is how you define the set of specific capabilities that this prospect needs. You could take a look at their extended environment, who else is impacted. That's the related pains, similar kinds of conversations. Culture is where you begin to uncover, well, where do they see themselves in terms of experience and buying, inexperience, uniqueness, how do they implement, where do they sit or stand on the technology adoption curve, and so forth. What page is this in Doing Discovery? It's the entire book. And then the wrap up is where you close off anything that you haven't yet collected. Sometimes this is the best time to talk about timing and to define value realization events. A lot of people will ask the what happens if you do nothing question, which is a great one to help avoid no decision outcomes. The final open-ended question, this is the question I offered earlier. Is there anything I haven't asked that I should be asking? And particularly if you're dealing, well, frankly, with anyone. But there you go, page 137 to 138. Well done, sir. Is to define a mutual action plan. What are the next steps mutually that we're both going to pursue? When do we get back together, etc.? So that's the full Doing Discovery methodology, and it really does map to all of these different dimensions that we had introduced or explored in this webinar. So I want to go back to this. 80% of a typical team, in many cases, believe they're doing an adequate or good job in discovery. But if you talk to senior management, it turns out they aren't. They don't know what they don't know. They are victims of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Look it up. So everything else being equal, from the standpoint of the prospect, the vendor that is doing a superior job in discovery puts themselves in a competitively advantageous position. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like you to do, and you don't have to answer this in chat here, but ask yourselves on these 6, or what will be in a moment, 7 levels of discovery skills, where you sit. Do you simply uncover statements of pain? Do you explore them more deeply? Do you investigate the impact? Do you quantify the value? Are you skilled at re-engineering vision? Can you apply these skills to folks across the technology adoption curve, burn victims, new products, transactional sales cycles, and other scenarios. Most people, very frankly, are operating around level 2. They get pain and not much else. I do want to introduce what you might call a brief or attenuated discovery methodology, really good for transactional sales processes, situations where you're dealing with executives or folks who don't have a lot of time. It's offered here in bold. And I finally just want to close things off by asking the musical question. So how much, 16, John, you're funny. How much discovery is enough? What do you think the answer is? Type it in your chat dialog box. Let's see what you guys come up with. Yeah, it depends. But you can, I think, Maria, you answered it correctly, which is when both sides are satisfied. Ladies and gentlemen, doing discovery is as simple as ABC. Always be curious. I hope you found this useful. I do want to draw your attention to the resources area on our website. There are a pile of articles, a couple of great books, our blog, some other stuff. Articles in particular you may find surprisingly useful. We started something called the Never Stop Learning series, I don't know, about 6 months ago. I try to churn out or update an article about every week to 2 weeks. So if you're ever bored on a weekend and you're looking for something to cure insomnia, I invite you to read one of those articles. Currently, doing discovery, there's something like 4,150 copies that have been purchased. That doesn't include those that have been passed around. And I was surprised to find that somewhere, well now, over 40,000 copies of Great Demo have been purchased and passed around over the past few years. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this time useful. We've got a few minutes if you have questions and if Sammy is still available. So thanks very much for investing this time with me. And we'll open this up to any questions folks might have. Oh, I should offer, while Sammy's unmuting there, if you want a copy of the deck, just send an email to me at pcohan@greatdemo.com and I will send you the deck. Thanks, folks. So Sammy, what do we have in Q&A, if anything?
Yeah, so I think you were just too comprehensive. There's no questions so far. So
Wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm a
Trying to
little bit
read.
confused on that term comprehensive. Doesn't comprehensive mean comprehensive? You can't be more or less. Never mind. Never
True,
mind.
true, true. Um, we have someone that's asking, is there a new edition? I think they mean of
Yeah, there's a new, so Great Demo was originally released in 2003. That's 20 years ago. I'm not that old. I'm only about 25. Did a second edition in 2005. The third edition came out just a few months ago. It is dramatically updated, improved, new topics, storytelling, other forms of proof, implementing the methodology. I urge you, even if you've gotten the first edition or the second edition, you should get the third edition because it's better. I hope that answers the question. Let us know if it did or not, please.
awesome. Cool. So yeah, that is the newest edition. Very awesome. Okay, we have any tips for quickly identifying where someone is on the technology adoption curve early on in discovery?
Early on in discovery, you can ask them what other tools or products they have purchased and when. That's a really easy way to understand that. So when you ask them that, they'll say, oh yeah, we're buying things all the time. Or they'll say, well, we haven't made a serious change in a few years, or something similar. That can give you a very rapid indication. So what have you been your large purchase buying habits over the past 3 to 5 years? You can also do a direct approach, by the way. Where would you place yourselves as an organization on the technology adoption curve? Note that there will often be technology teams, I should say technology investigation teams in organizations that might be otherwise large, stodgy, and slow. Their jobs in these technology exploration teams is to do exactly that, explore technology, and then make recommendations. Sometimes vendors are fooled when a technology investigation team makes a small purchase so they can investigate and really put something into production use, but it never gets rolled out. So you need to ask questions about the nature of that team. So I hope that helps. Let us know.
All right, cool. So we're getting a couple other questions in here. So I'm just going to keep rapid firing them to you. So any tips on how to get your AE business partner on the same page regarding discovery?
So I would recommend gentle but firm beating on a daily basis until morale improves. No, this is all about, people talk about this all the time. Team, team, team. It's a team sport. It is. But there's real differences in terms of maturity you need to deal with. So if you have somebody who's experienced, mature, and open, you lay out a mutual action plan, if you will, for who's going to do what in discovery, who's going to do what for the rest of the selling and buying process. You talk about buyer enablement points and so forth. On the other hand, many times we have experienced pre-sales people who are paired with less experienced salespeople. And sometimes you just need to have a direct conversation that says, hey, let me help you come up to speed. Now, it can be a little bit challenging because people want to have their pride, if you will. But you got to go back to the idea that our mutual goal here is to secure the order and a happy renewing customer. So if you position it that way, and then you go through what our roles and responsibilities, what are our experiences, what are we both good at, what do we need to get better at, that can help drive that conversation. So I hope that helps a little bit. Actually, we've done a number of webinars on that same topic. And if you guys look on Consensus's resources pages, you'll probably find several.
Yep. Okay, I really like this question. If the sales rep hasn't done sufficient discovery and you're pushed into giving a demo, what is one or two questions you could ask the audience to get information from them when you start the demo?
So this is what is so valuable about a vision generation demo. So if you have insufficient information, let's say you have a part of a situation slide that includes a job title and a couple of pain points, and you have then other areas that are blank, put up that slide. Start the conversation by saying, well, here's what I understand. Let me just make sure I understand that correctly. But here's some other questions I'd really like to ask before we inflict you with what otherwise might be an out of alignment demo. So you can begin to do a little bit of discovery, and then you do quid pro quo. You've asked some questions. You say, hey, dear prospect, would you like a few example screens based on what you've told us so far? Prospect says, yes, please, I really want a demo. You show a few screens, you describe the value, describe how it solves their problems. You go back and forth. This is not a disco demo conversation. It is really a structured process called vision generation demonstrations. And I strongly recommend pick up great demo, read the rest of the book, but read chapter 11 because it will guide you through exactly those processes. That is what a vision generation demo is designed to do. So I hope that answers that.
Awesome. Love that. Okay, kind of along the same lines of sales reps, AEs to SEs, how do you deal with a sales rep who insists on attending the discovery calls and goes right into used car salesman mode?
If you're face to face with them, kick them under the table hard. What you have to do is a debrief afterwards. You've got to do a brief. You can't beat them up in the middle of the call. You do a debrief and gently but firmly let them, what? One of the best ways to do this is to turn the tables and invite your salesperson to now be, if you will, model what it's like to be a prospect. Do the example of having the flu that Sammy and I did so that they begin to get that understanding of why discovery is so important. I used to use an example. Imagine, Sammy, you have the flu and you arrive, you're not sure, you don't feel good at all, and you arrive at the hospital and somebody grabs you and says, hey, before you see a doctor, before we ask you any questions, let me show you everything we have in the hospital. So I'm going to take you to X-ray. You can see our X-ray equipment, our MRI equipment. Here's the lab. Here's the emergency room. You don't want to be in there. We're going to take you over here. Here's gerontology. Hopefully you won't be there for 100 years. Use some analogies, flip the script so that they begin to understand that this isn't about selling yet. This is about discovery, and then the selling will happen on its own to a certain degree. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, love that. All right. Any tips on convincing a customer or prospect that we need detailed discovery up front to prevent problems down the line?
Um, So again, what you're going to find is that the inexperienced buyers are going to be in much more of that mode. And again, that's where vision generation demos work delightfully, because they're designed to satisfy this prospect's desire to see what's possible to get that demo, and then to move them gently but firmly into a discovery conversation. That is what a vision generation demo does. Experienced buyers, you don't really actually need to have that conversation because they get it. So that's a clue that you're dealing with somebody that's inexperienced or anxious, if you will. You can talk, a second approach is to talk through some of the key elements of buying processes that other successful buyers have followed, just to let them know that you understand the pathway, you can help them down that pathway. And then you can talk about buyer enablement functions like, hey, dear prospect, before we do a discovery call, would it make sense to execute a mutual NDA? Prospect says, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, you're right, we should do that first. So you provide them with some quid pro quo here. You begin to help them understand why these elements are important so that we can go through that. So I hope that at least gives some ideas.
Awesome. Well, Peter, this has been really great. If nothing else, I just loved that one little tip that you gave about asking at the end, is there anything I haven't gone over? Like, I just loved that tip so much. So if nothing else, I think I took at least that away. But so much great content in this whole webinar. Thank you so much for lending us your time. As Peter mentioned, guys, if you want access to the slides, go ahead and shoot him an email. We'll send the recording of this session as well to you in the next day or two. Thanks everybody for joining us. We hope to see you at DemoFest X West Coast. And thank you so much again to you, Peter, for lending us your time and expertise. We'll see you guys soon.
My pleasure. And everyone, many thanks for investing the time together today. Bye
Thanks.
now.
Bye.